Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Boys, we're back with another In Context. Today's Sunday, March 23rd. We have some significant events happening in Turkey. I think these events are currently internal. They have some problems, but they have the potential to spill over to other countries. I was hoping we can visit these events to give us some in context as to what's going on there.
So for those who don't know right now, you probably should know because it's been all over the news. President Erdogan has, recently had the mayor of Istanbul, Ekrem İmamoğlu, charged and arrested on corruption and potentially terrorism charges. But it looks like they didn't actually go through with the terrorism charges yet. The charges are related to internal corruption, and this has sparked mass protests, very large student demonstrations and popular demonstrations against this arrest. This Istanbul mayor is quite popular, and he's seen as well. I think today actually the CHP voted for him to be their official candidate in the upcoming presidential election. It'll be in a couple of years, and he's seen widely as being a very viable competitor to Erdogan. And what I've sort of been reading is that most polling suggests that he would win in a head-to-head matchup if that actually transpired. So a lot of people are seeing this, the timing of this arrest, especially, as well as the charges, which there is some internal. There were some of his own CHP people did report certain financial misgivings and corruption. So it's not complete. It doesn't seem like it's completely, totally fabricated, manufactured. There might be some reality to this, but the reality is the timing looks very suspicious. Having this guy arrested literally on the day he was to be nominated for the opposition party presidential candidate. So, I think it's interesting to look at, what does this mean for the region, right? So obviously within Turkey, this is a major issue. Turkish economy has been very sluggish. There's been lots of problems recently. The golden years of early 2010s Turkey is long past. Many people have been calling the Turkish government or the Turkish political system now competitive authoritarianism. Some people going as far as saying that this latest movement is falling into the category of style authoritarianism. Whether that's true or not is up for discussion and debate on this. But my main interest is like, what does this mean regionally? I think we should think about that. I personally think that regionally speaking, this could be a major shift in dynamics. Right, the Kemalist CHP party led by Imamoglu has a very, very, very different approach to foreign policy, to regional affairs, to the Muslim world than the Erdogan government. And as I was talking earlier, my biggest concern regionally right now would probably be with regard to Syria, which is looking increasingly dependent upon Turkish military assistance in order to stabilize and to fend off ongoing Israeli incursions. Right, just last night, the military airport Palmyra was bombed again by Israeli defense forces. Continue to basically on a every other day basis at this point bomb some military site in Syria, and the Syrian government has absolutely nothing they can respond really. And the implications of this are severe. Like, one, will the Erdogan government survive this? Large enough protests can be very destabilizing. Clearly, Erdogan has complete control of the state, police, military, judiciary. We know this is all under his control. But still, if these protests get loud enough and unruly enough, large enough, the regime itself could collapse. On the other hand, even if the regime doesn't, you're going to probably see a very charged Kemalist CHP party, regardless of whether it's Mansur Yavaş or whether it's Imamoglu who are going to be presidential candidates. And it's not looking good right now for AKP if the election ends up being fairly run. I don't really know what the future holds, but there could be some major changes on the horizon in Turkey. Very, very significant changes, right? And like I'm talking a complete 180 in foreign policy, perhaps. What do you think about that? Does that sound like a possibility if the CHP does assume the presidency and takes political power in Turkey?
I don't think so. I think Erdogan is being very strategic in doing this now. So first, the business that this is a legal process. Let's not fake it. No, this is political. And Erdogan is doing it at a time where he thinks the US wouldn't mind, and Europe cannot mind, and Russia cannot mind. So CHP will always look for an international sponsor, and without an international sponsor, they won't get very far. So he is using an opportune time to castrate his opposition. And that has high probabilities of succeeding. It is not to say that Erdogan is a nice guy, and I think people should deal with this with their eyes open. He is authoritarian, and there is no debate about that. The state, the way it's built, is not pro-Islam, but it's not actively anti-Islam. He is pursuing what he perceives to be the national interest of the Turkish nation state, not the Ummah. So let's not fool ourselves about that. However, it is true that the current government policies are more advantageous to the Ummah than anything CHP is going to do. Although CHP has Alawi factions and has interest in carrying favor with Alawis, however, it is also true that it's part of the nation-state project. So even CHP won't go in the opposite 180 degrees direction. The army that is implementing Erdogan's policy, in my opinion, has deep Kemalist roots. In my opinion, when Erdogan keeps assigning the last coup to the Golanist faction, he is only half true, because he doesn't want to hit the real touchy part. The army is Kemalist. However, it's implementing Erdogan's policy. A, because it doesn't have enough political clout to pull something else. B, because it agrees that this more or less runs with the nation states' interests. So I don't think CHP would completely go against Erdogan's policies, but even if they were 100% for it, they couldn't pull it through, because they are obviously anti-Islam and anti-Ummah, even if they wanted to. Okay, so they wouldn't have the credentials, neither with the Ummah nor with everybody else. So yes, it is true that from a foreign policy perspective, but even from internal Turkey perspective, Erdogan is authoritarian, not a nice guy, but the alternatives are even much worse for people inside Turkey and for the Ummah outside Turkey. Because these people are deeply corrupt as well. And they ran Turkey for, how long? For 80 years with spectacular failure. So they have nothing to show for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to first point out, though, that the investigations against the Istanbul mayor are not something new. They have been going on for quite some time. So, again, I haven't seen all the details of exactly what he's charged with, but it seemed pretty extensive at least. Now, obviously, my point was that, like, the timing of this is very political, right? So it was a politically timed move that happened literally, as the elections are, the primary election is going on, basically the equivalent of the primary election within the party for CHP, which really leads me to a question: like, is this a move out of strength or out of weakness? Right? Because again, Erdogan wouldn't have done this if his position was too weak, right? Because in many ways, his position is relatively strong right now, with Trump and the United States backing out of its international commitments. Turkey is quickly sweeping in to fill the role of, major security player in NATO and even the guarantor of security in EU, potentially. And I think that Erdogan is clever enough to recognize that gives him quite a bit of power and the opportunity to do this now, while he has the ability to do it and get away with it, so to speak, even if the international community is going to hold their nose and try to downplay it. Right? So if this would have happened at a different point in time, I could have seen the international community jumping heavily on board with CHP and trying to pressure and push him out. But I don't think they're going to do that right now, because one, there's no guarantee that CHP-led government would provide the same level of commitment and support, at least even if it's not, even if it's just verbalized. There's no guarantee that the Kemalist Nationalist Party would do that. And second, again, Trump seems to have a sort of weird personal respect for Erdogan that I can't quite put my finger on why, other than the obvious explanations of strongmen siding together. But will Trump treat a CHP-led government the same? My inclination would be no, which would mean some significant changes again in regional policy. Because remember, what I've been reading is that Trump is in communication with Erdogan, basically saying that the Syria portfolio is yours, and I'll let you handle it. I trust you to do something that's not going to undermine our American security interests too much. I don't want to deal with it. I got other things to worry about. It's yours. Would he give such carte blanche to a new government, Turkey? I don't think he would. If anything, I think he would probably try to weaken their position and punish them for going against his chosen plan of action. So that, of course, will have significant regional repercussions. And you're right. I think, yes, of course, the policy would be 180 degrees different. There are indications that certain foreign policy positions that Erdogan has would still be followed through with the CHP government. Right? They still also are interested in finding a balance between East and West. I don't think this isn't the 1990s. They're not going to just jump on and bandwagon to whatever the United States and the EU says. I don't think that's going to happen. But again, there's a lot of moving parts in this whole situation. It's very fluid and dynamic right now. And how that plays out could really impact what options whoever ends up coming out ahead has. If things end up getting too bloody and violent and too destructive, it could really limit the hand of whoever, Erdogan or whoever comes out ahead at the end of this. I mean, I really think, the election is pretty far off now. So there's a lot of things that can change both domestically and internationally in the interim. But I think the developments of Turkey are something to definitely pay attention to. These protests are very large. And, the students are becoming increasingly empowered, I guess you could say. They feel they're not scared anymore. And it seems like, when you have a lot of young people willing to sacrifice, even their freedom to protest what they see as an unjust system, that's very powerful stuff. Very powerful governments have collapsed because of stuff like that before. So I think this is always something we should keep an eye on as we look at things from an Islamic perspective, how that's going to affect people.
About corruption in CHP, well, this has a long and quote-unquote unproud tradition. And I don't think any of these guys is in it for the sake of Allah. Okay, so it's natural that corruption would breed and run deep in constructions like CHP. So nothing shocking in there, and they have a tradition of this. The fact that they are dealing with each other is just expected as well. You looked at the strategic and structural perspective of this. I tend to be even more empirical than you, so I'm looking at the short-term perspective here. Short-term, the US and the EU have no interest in destabilizing Turkey right now. And Erdogan gets that. So he gets that he can get on with what he needs to do, quote unquote, needs to do internally without getting too much fuss and attempts at economic or political manipulation from either the US or the EU, even Russia, because they need him. So he's making use of that and taking an opportune time to do what he has wanted to do for some time. I think he can pull off this. The students who are agitating without an access point, a sponsor, I don't think will amount to much. They will make a fuss and then settle down. graduate and settle down. Because there is no real cause there. Imamoglu is not a cause.
May I ask, why are the students so pro CHP? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, CHPs they're nasty.
Well, I don't think it's pro CHP as much as anti-Erdogan. Okay, I don't think anybody in Turkey, whether they're on the left or the right, is under any false illusions at this point about the realities of all of the major political. Even people on the inside who I've talked to, and my university has a lot of people that are on the inside. Everyone's sort of aware that Turkish politics is not a clean game and it's not a pleasant place. So I don't think these people are. This isn't about CHP the party. Okay, that's one, I think. Second, Imamoglu is a little bit different than previous CHP leaders. He has more charisma. He is a little bit more religious. He's not as militantly secular and atheistic as some of these other guys in the past. He has done a pretty decent job of trying to pull CHP away from their very hardcore, atheistic kind of the program, the image that they give off. I think he's smart enough to recognize that Turkey has changed. It's not the same Turkey that was in the 70s and 80s. And you're going to have to contend with religious Turks. They're not going away. And I think he's smart enough to realize that, if he can pull away a few of those, it'll help him a lot. So I think a lot of young people see Imamoglu as a change, a breath of fresh air. He's younger. He's got a different vision. And finally, I think the main thing, though, is really young people are frustrated with the situation in Turkey. I think that the economy's really struggling. Lira is, I saw the other day after the arrest, 42 to $1. 42 lira to $1.
Wow.
2010 or 2012 was 1.3. Now just think about that drop. 1.3 lira 15 years ago to now 42. I mean, that is just an absolutely catastrophic currency collapse. And young people are feeling the brunt of it. Job opportunities are limited. And the jobs that are available don't pay as well. And I think people are, just like in most places, are driven largely by economic realities. And of course, I think young people tend to value free speech and protest and democracy. And it's not just amongst the leftists, Kemalists either. I think many of the young, pragmatic-minded Turks I've met also see the importance of representative governance, people being able to have a say in the political process. I haven't met anybody who's looking authoritarian, right? So even people that normally were ideologically aligned with Erdogan and AKP are not happy with the fact that things have gone in this direction. And people are, I think that's really what's driving these protests. I don't think we should see it as people are now believing CHP political party agenda again. I think that would be a very serious misreading of the situation.
It's reasonable for that authoritarianism would grate on people. Nobody should consider that wrong or a bad thing. It's only that you look at the alternatives and you figure out that authoritarian A and authoritarian B are authoritarians. Authoritarian A is really nasty and corrupt and is going to cause a lot of harm internally and externally. Authoritarian B is not nice and is going to cause harm internally and externally, but not at the same level or scale. So given the alternatives, you don't go and support complete destruction. That's all.
And I think this puts a lot of young Muslims who are pragmatic-minded, thinking about the future, who are in a very difficult situation, right? I think most young Muslims that I have come across want to see Turkey succeed. They want to see the AKP of the past come back, the one that, initially gave everyone hope. And at the same time, though, the alternative from a pragmatic perspective, in some ways is even worse, right? You can see potential for crackdown on this expression in Turkey. Even though I don't know if that necessarily would happen, it's always a possibility with these guys. Because there's a significant wing within CHP that are very hostile to religion. Right? Any CHP leader, if he ever is president, is going to have to contest with that. He's got to appease that faction. They might want to, go back to the way things were when women were not allowed to wear headscarf in school, even though they said they're past that. I'm sure that's just, put them in power and see if they actually stick by that. Right? Because I don't think they will. At least I don't think some of them. So,
I'll believe it when I see it.
I believe it when I see it. Yeah, me too. Because I followed this stuff pretty closely. I have my contacts in both parties, and they assured me that those days are over, and we believe in women's free expression, good job or not. But again, I'll believe it when I see it. It's easy to say that when you're not in power, right? Now, here's my thing, though, is I really think, though, that the situation in Syria is the one that is the most intriguing. And I think it's the one that has the most potential for really bad things if there is a change in political power. I don't see a CHP-led government providing military support to defend the current Syrian government. I don't see them being as proactive in making sure that areas that are under threat from Assad are protected. I just don't see that. They might still have a similar interest in doing whatever it is that Turkey is doing on the border with the Kurds, but I don't know. I just don't. I think that the ones who could really end up suffering most with the change in the regime in Turkey would be the people in Syria, internationally speaking.
Internationally, internally as well, the population in Turkey as well.
Oh yeah,
Including
definitely.
including Kurds in Turkey.
No, you're absolutely right. I think it's pretty safe to say that CHP approach to the migration issue in Turkey has been far more racist and hostile than AKP, and I think I don't think that's really a controversial thing to say. That their position has been really nasty. You see it when you're talking.
They don't know how to manage an economy. They don't know how to manage an economy as well, and they have a long track record of this.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, they're sort of more inward-looking socialist economic policies didn't provide the growth that the more free market-driven Erdogan regime's model did, at least in the early years. Yeah, I get it. A lot of that was propped up by debt, borrowing, and deficit spending, and credit. I understand that. I'm not stupid. But again, the CHP approach, I mean, if you just look at the Turkish economic situation over the last 30 years, it's completely, Turkey went from being a borderline third world country in many ways to being right up there with your mid-level EU country in terms of average GDP per capita, right? But at the same time, things are very expensive in Turkey, right? It's not cheap anymore to go to Turkey, even for tourists. That was what I found the most interesting. Last time I was there, and I was shopping, and I was at the grocery store, and I was getting food. I was thinking, man, these prices are right on par with EU prices. The days of getting a full Turkish breakfast for like 3 or 4 euros are long gone. You're paying $12 now, just like you would if you were in Greece or if you were in any other country in Europe. So now, considering that those high prices and a lot of Turkish workers don't have the kind of money to buy that stuff, life is very hard, So yeah, I don't know. That's sort of my take on what's currently going on.
Yeah, just for context, the lira was revalued under Erdogan, and it had reached the point where you had to use thousands and thousands of liras to buy anything. So the CHP has a long and unproud record on that as well. So they have nothing to show. But that doesn't mean that Erdogan is a nice guy, or that anyone should go out and support oppression or support taking people without a proper legal process. So there is a balance to be stricken there, and no one should go out and claim this is great.
All right, I think we got it.
Okay. Thank you.
Shabab, thank you for coming on today. See you in 2 weeks.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure. Salam.
Assalamu alaikum.